Today I will be teaching you how to take your Mini Z disc brakes from this to this with a very simple hack. So it turns out that with the brake calipers on the GLD, they don't come painted like they do in the picture. So I found an interesting hack, which is these paint pens. For those of you who are not familiar with this, it's just a pen with a felt tip end, like that. It's actually filled with an oil-based paint. They come in many different varieties, and you'll typically see them labelled as the Posca brand, which is a black pen and a coloured cap. But I found these dirt cheap on eBay, and for some of the colours, these are great. For some of the other colours, they're not so good. The whites, for example, are really bad. The black, grey, and the red have proven to be pretty good. Although with the colours, you have to be careful because just like spray paint, you actually want to undercoat it. And we'll go over that in a minute. Now, I'm actually going to keep this quick for once. So let's get started and start removing the disc brake that's on there. You'll see that I've already removed those two. But I did want to take this off on stream. So let's do that now. Who wants to take bets on if I can get this video done in under 15 minutes or not? If I do all disc brakes, probably not. We're only going to do one disc brake today. We're not going to install it when we're done because these paint pens actually take a bit of time to dry. I should mention that these are cheap and you do pay for that. The Posca pens work much better for some things, although for the task we're using them for today, which is just to put a bit of silver on the brake calipers and then put some red highlights on the disc brakes, they're more than adequate, as long as you pay attention to a couple of things. Now, you might have seen in the picture itself, if I can get really close in, let's see all the wounds on my fingers. There is a bit of a black, let's see, there's a bit of a black gap there. And that's just because I don't have a fine enough tip to get in there, and I didn't want to put too much paint on it, so I just lived with it. I do need some tweezers for this because you have to have a way to hold the brake calipers when you're doing all this work. So I've got my trusty Tamiya clasping tweezers, which are great for some very particular uses. And if anyone's looking at the math on my desktop, that is I've started working on the 3D printed parts for the Gecko chassis, and that's me just running the numbers to make sure that the body is all good. Basically, I've got a rough prototype, I just need to refine the numbers now. So with any luck, I should have that 3D printed by the weekend. Now, I got smart. BMR 3 was talking about using magnets, so I went off and picked up a whole bunch. But I actually keep a bunch of magnets around anyway. The reason being is I use them for holding screws so I don't lose them. Or to turn tools temporarily magnetic, although over time they'll actually cause them to become permanently magnetic. So I actually bought a demagnetizer tool the other weekend. I'm kind of surprised I didn't have one up till now, but it's kind of getting to the point where sometimes I do need tools to be magnetized and other times I don't. So there we go, we're grasping I need a better way to present this. Let's do that. Oh, black and black's probably not the best idea, but we've got it all. I'm just basically holding it. And I don't have any light colored surfaces. Oh well. So we'll get right into it. I'm going to move this out of the way so I don't damage it. And I need something to replace it. We'll use a gyro specifications. Yep, that'll do. So it's pretty simple. Draws like a normal pen. If you push it down, it releases more paint. It's very possible to load this up with too much paint. So we're just going to go lightly and start colouring in. Can you see at that angle? Yeah, that's better. So I mean, the effect's pretty dramatic. You see it straight away. It looks gold coloured. The silver is actually one of the nicer colours to work with. Going around the edges as well. Not that anyone will see it, but it matters to me. And just apply a bit more force there. Not good. These are a bit fiddly. Now the It is an oil-based paint, so it is very easy. Like, you can already probably see it on my fingers. I'm already getting silver all over. So be careful. I should say go slowly, but I'm obviously not doing that. The fool that I am. Oh, I could go on for lengths about that, but let's get on with the painting. So I'm just going pretty rough. I have noticed that the black is also really, really good, and I'm very, very tempted to go off and use this on my Mini Z white bodies and just do a custom hand paint job on a couple of my models as an alternative to spray can or rattle can or airbrush. Now, I did actually pick up a cheap airbrush for, once again, the rally truck, but I'm very tempted to go off and do some Mini Z bodies with it, but especially for detail work, this isn't actually all that bad. Now, I did release a bit of extra paint here, and I'll see if I can pick it up on camera. And if we tilt that in, you can see I don't have the black gap this time. But I did have a bulge of paint a second ago, so this actually dries pretty quickly. Probably on the order of about 30 seconds or so. So once I've done this side, I'll be able to swap over to the other. Now, I did mention about the red, and I do want to touch on that a bit more. If you do any rattle can stuff, you'll know that you want to underlay it with another color, like silver to make it brighter or black to make it darker. So this has actually made the red pop quite a bit by putting a silver under it. If I'd have gone with the black underneath the red, it would have been noticeably darker even on camera. So you can see I've gone silver there with the rattle can. So we're putting silver over the entire disc brake, and the reason for that is that we will be making the red pop a bit more. In my experiments, if you do the black, easy if I land against something. If I do the black underneath the red with these pens, it's very, very dark. So, and we're not going to do the inside. We're only going to stick to the outsides. Just waiting for it to dry now. Yeah, so pretty simple. You want it brighter silver. You want it darker black. With spray paints, at least, if you change the amount of layers, so if you do one layer of red and then one layer of black, you get this two-tone effect, which is really, really nice. Depending on the angle you look at the paint job, it'll either appear darker, black with red highlights, or it'll appear red with dark highlights. I don't have an example. It's one of those things that's actually very, very hard to capture on camera because it's very light specific. And I'm running several lights here, which totally ruins the effect. Now, I've decided to, instead of hiding the light stay, you can actually see my screen as well. I've got the lights on camera, just to sort of show you what my setup looks like. That's just sitting on a small tripod. Nice and simple. I've got one there, one behind the camera, and I've got a big overhead light there. And that's been adequate. It's actually pitch black outside at the moment, and I've actually got most of my windows open, funnily enough. I don't have the blinds drawn, and it's more than enough light. So just calling in the rest here. As you can see, this is a super, super simple way to paint something. I really want to see it on the detail work around windows. So if you spray painted something, a color or whatever, and then you wanted to do the black trim, I could very much see these pens being a great way to do that. You get a lot of finesse. You don't have to necessarily do a lot of marking. You can use a post-it note for a marker temporarily and just quickly draw it in and then pull it up. And the paint is relatively thin, so it will get under some things, but that thinness of the paint is actually an advantage for specific tasks. Like if you've got a V channel cut out on the body and you want like black to just flow through it, that's one way you can do it. So I mean, we're done. That was super quick. The best bit about this is there's no paintbrushes to clean up. There's no airbrush to clean out. There's no spray can or spray cans. Oh, honestly, that body was harder than it looked. Spray cans are not as simple as you would think. They do tend to spurt a bit and splatter, which depending on your paint job may be fine or may be very, very bad. And you need an area, and you should be wearing a respirator. well, I should be wearing a respirator, and I actually did because I've got lung issues. So I'm just painting the red over the top very, very carefully. In fact, now these can splatter. I shouldn't actually be doing this with the head off, but I know there's actually not much paint on the tip, so I'm fine. And it is important to let the paints dry in between applications. This is just like if you had a rattle can. The colours can blend into each other, and you can end up ruining one of these markers because you're making direct physical contact unlike a spray can. Oops. And once again, I'm not going to show you all the details because I'm trying to do this, whoa, just like that. So that's why I've actually got paper down at the moment. But that does give me a richer red, so. Now the red is very, very globby, so I'm trying to avoid putting too much on there because it will hide the details. I'm going to put down just enough red. So if I was doing this properly, I'd actually mask it. So I've just made a mistake. So I'm just using a tissue to wipe it back a bit. That's not working, so what I'll do is I'll actually go over that with silver again, because I'll have to give this a second touch up of silver. The reason being is that these tweezers do actually leave marks. So I've actually got too much paint on the end there. Just going to touch that up. Now if we get really close, it's going to work. Or maybe not. It's a bit hard to see, but the very edges, there's a bit of silver going. Yeah, you can see there, a bit of silver showing through. Once that red dries and we hit it with the second dose, not only will this be significantly redder, it's a bit of a transparency, watery red at the moment, but it will also get rid of some of those details. It won't completely eliminate it. That's due to the sheer amount of detail on this part, but it will definitely help. And in fact, I'm going to check my desk, and I've had a bit of leakage through it, so let's clean that up. So if you get to it quickly enough, it just wipes off very, very quickly. And I was just going to remove a bit of paint, just in the name of speed. Now this has bled a tiny bit, but nothing we can't correct. So the other thing is that these colours tend to be a bit glossy, whereas the silver tends to be more of a matte finish. I'm also not going to worry too much about the back of the brake because it's actually pretty difficult to see. With my wheel choice, it's not that easy to see, but I wanted to do this anyway, just in case I swap to better, want more visible wheels later. Or I should say wheels where you can see through them easier. Now, the other great thing about these pens is I actually ended up scratching the Optima case. So this is a Kyosho Optima. I ended up scratching the silver when I was cutting out these holes here and here at the end. And actually you can see the red dots behind there. So what I did is I just touched it with the red, and there is a bit of a color difference, but unless you're actually looking for it, you can't see it. So I do use these to touch up my models. The black's really good for that. The biggest issue you're going to have is with color matching, but depending on how bad it is, you only have to get close enough. You don't have to be exact. And it's most likely better than nothing. So just waiting for this to dry, then we'll touch it up with the silver. And then we're going to call it done. So let's see, it's been 13 minutes, and I'm going to be able to keep this short, maybe even under 15 minutes. But if you do have any questions, post them below. For anyone who's been here at this channel for long enough, they know that I answer questions very, very quickly, and normally within 12 hours. And I like to leave very, very long, detailed answers. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about this video. It can be about anything. But if you have some questions about this, or you want links to these parts, although if you just do a search on eBay for paint pen, like I think these are like $1 per marker, and that's an Australian dollar, so it's more like 50 cents USD. And I had, the delivery on these was next day, which was pretty good. For some things local, shipping internally, locally, it's super quick at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to call that done. And you can see there's some rough black marks, and that's just where I've gripped it. So just touch them up slightly. I mean, the best bit about doing the brakes as a starter is because they're hidden away, and this is mainly, I don't know really how to say it, aesthetic, or it sets the mood rather than is totally accurate. Because a lot of the detail of this is hidden away, you don't see it, so you can actually afford to make mistakes. So this actually turns out to be a great first project. So let me just work out how I'm going to hold this in front of the camera. May seem simple, but the angles are just really difficult for me. So there we go. This is still drying. But behind a wheel, it's going to look fine. So thanks for joining me. As I said, ask questions. I'm happy to answer them, or post on Reddit on rminized, which is where I typically hang out, and I'll try and get back to you. But apart from that, keep on building, and hope you notice the Easter eggs in this video, and expect the rally truck, an update on the rally truck fairly shortly. See you later.